leadership, consulting group, and basically she's really good with coaching Eastern Asian professionals and help them to grow their career in different corporate setup. And Sung has spent many years in different corporate, U.S. corporate. And I think this is something that many of us will have shown interest in, especially the ones that have spent years in the, in our professional jobs. We often heard, discussion. I was part of the Georgia, the professional, leadership association. And one of the topics we keep talking about that in our community, all these professional leaders we talk about is that how can we do differently to promote ourselves and to do as well as our peers. We have seen many peers that's from Indian and from other cultural background that have been doing very well. And unfortunately in our small group, and we all and hopefully that we all can learn from what she has done before. All right, Sung, I'm going to give the podium to you, and could you please go ahead and introduce yourself and start the presentation?
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy, for the opening. Great to be on the call, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present leadership and career development for East Asians in the US. Before I start the session, let me just briefly introduce myself. So as Jeremy briefly mentioned, that I spent about 25 years in the Fortune 500 corporates in 6 countries and 3 continents, including Asia Pacific region, Europe, and North America for 25 years. While I was working those companies, so it's all US-based and UK-based corporates, I always start to ask me questions, why there are not many people who look like me? There are not many senior leaders who look like me in the organization. At first that I thought it was a language barrier, but later I realized it's more than language barrier because I start to see many leaders who are coming from non-English speaking background. So it's not a language barrier. Once I start to travel and I start to see more as I move up to the corporate ladder, that I start to realize that foundational things coming from the cultural background and the education that East Asians tend to carry. And then that puts certain challenges for East Asians to move up the corporate ladder. So this evening, I'm going to spend about 45 minutes. I'm going to spend about talking about specific challenges that East Asians tend to face, especially when we try to build our career in the US. And no matter whether we are born in the US, migrated here, or transferred here with a job. Then I'm going to talk some of the differences between East Asians and the rest of the Asians, and also the differences between Eastern and Western culture, and then also some of the favored leadership styles, and what are we going to do about those differences. And I will also talk about the build a bridge between the cultural differences and how to build a cross-cultural awareness. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to briefly introduce my businesses and then some of the case studies that I have worked with my clients. So I hope the session is informative for everyone, and please do not hesitate to ask any questions. I like to have this call to be a lot more informative, and then do not hesitate to ask any questions. All right, so I will go back to my presentation. Let's talk about some of the data points for East Asians. To pull this presentation together, I use 3 sources. One is the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. So they send out the report. The latest report is as of 2018. So I use some of the data points from there. And then the other one is working with my clients. So I use my observation and also the work that I've done with my clients that is being used as a source to pull together this deck. And then the last one is my experience working in the large corporations overseas outside of my home country. So those are the three sources that I have used to pull the deck. Let's look at some of the data points for Asians. Basically, Asians in the US, oh, by the way, the US government does not separate East Asians from total Asians when they issue the report. So for the data points that I'm going to share now on this section is only covering the total Asian. But I think East Asians have very similar characteristics in terms of data points. So basically, Asians are mostly highly educated and hold the high percentage of professional and managerial occupations and highest wage earners. So for example, more than 60% of Asians in the US have 4-year college degree and higher. As a result, about 50% of Asians tend to have professional and managerial occupations, whereas other ethnicity groups have lower percentage of that occupation holding. And because of the professional and managerial occupations, that we tend to have high wage earnings. So when you compare the amount, Asians tend to have about 20% more earnings than the rest of the groups. In terms of unemployment rate, we consistently record lowest unemployment rate since the recording started from year 2000. One key point, the Asians represent 5.6% of the total US population. However, Asians also represent 12% of the professional workforce in the US. As a result, Asian Americans are not considered to be underrepresented in the US workforce. I have to say, I was really surprised because of these numbers, but also at the same time, the sentiment that Asian Americans are not considered to be underrepresented in the US corporate and workforce. But because of some of the data, official data coming from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, Asians are not considered to be underrepresented. However, it's not how I observed, and then this is not how I feel, that we are definitely, especially East Asians, definitely underrepresented in the US workforce. And there are a few articles to support that sentiment. So I pick up 2 articles out of many. One is from Harvard Business Review, the other one is Bloomberg Business Week. They were in general talking about Asians. However, there are some comments about the differences between East Asians and the rest than the Indians, for example. So basically the Harvard Business Review title is Asian Americans are the least likely group in the US. So least likely group in the US to be promoted to management. That's the title of the article. The other article that I selected is Bloomberg Business Week. Again, the title shows Asian Americans executives are missing on Wall Street. Basically, Asians, according to the statistics, are very good at entering the professional field. However, the social successes and also the very successful entry to the US corporates do not translate into the presence in a senior leadership positions. There are 2 points those articles are referring to. One is because of the high proportion I mentioned about the representation, overrepresentation in the professional field. Because of those, Asians are not part of the diversity and inclusion agenda in many US corporates because they see so many Asians in the entry field, but that does not click with them to consider Asians to be the future leaders. Second, this is probably the core topic of this conversation today, is that Asians, especially East Asians, are perceived to be lacking leadership qualities and leadership capabilities. And that's the perception, and the perception forms reality. So there are some truths in there. And then I'll show you some of the differences and perceptions that has been formed in the US. So let's think about ourselves. When you are working in the office or when you are at school, how would you see yourself? How would you compare yourself versus our counterpart? So our colleagues in the office who are non-Asians or who are Indians. How would you see us versus others? Some of the stereotypes that we have in the US around East Asians. For example, East Asians are perceived to be very competent, so meaning technically very sound, know what they are doing, have very deep knowledge, very cautious. So before we make any comments, we tend to check twice or 3 times. As a result, we are very deep. We do not make mistake. And also very hardworking, have a good work ethics, get things done. Also at the same time, we are perceived to be very introverted, quiet, and alone, and like to be alone and very private. Compared to the favored leadership style in the US, extroverted, socializing, like to have a debate, think out loud, and then also easily approachable, and then gregarious. So again, probably stereotype as well, but that is the typical and favored leadership style by the US corporations. As far as the leadership is concerned, also the other favored style is the autocratic leaders, the follow me type of leaders that has been favored by US corporations. Those characteristics are not perceived to exist in East Asians because of the different styles and then some of the stereotypes that East Asians carry. Okay, so that's a stereotype of the Asians. The other thing is East Asians show deference to authority, respect to hierarchy, and conform to the rules of the groups. Those behaviors and attitude is well shown how the COVID-19 has been managed. So if you look at the number of cases per million or per thousand in the population, if you look at the total number of cases and also number of deaths per thousand in East Asian countries versus Western counterpart, Eastern Asian countries have done extremely far better than Western counterpart. And I think it's because of our attitude that we conform to the rule of the groups, put others or the group's well-being and the happiness before individuals. And also we respect the hierarchy and also respect the orders of the society. As a result, we really manage the COVID situation, or we are still managing, but all the East Asian countries are doing really well. Whereas you might have seen some of the cases becoming a hotspot in some of the parts of the US. And also you might have seen the news and coverages in the US that some of the people are demanding to lifting the lockdown order, carrying the gun, having a protest at the state office. That shows the drastic differences. Like we conform the order of the group, whereas in the US and Western culture, that they respect the freedom of individuals a lot more, and they respect the right of individuals a lot more. That is a very big difference in terms of attitude and behavior. That is going to have an impact how we behave in the organization. The other difference that we have is that East Asians value humility. Probably this is one of the big areas that you are aware that we have to overcome. So one of the very famous Chinese proverb is about becoming or behaving like a bamboo. The higher you grow, the deeper you bow, meaning that you do not talk about your success. Everyone else is going to notice your success. So it's talking about the values of humility, being humble is very important attributes of a leader. Whereas in the US, totally different. You always self-promote, you sell yourself, always tout to your horn. East Asians humility value is always misinterpreted in the corporate setting. And then that's where we are missing a lot of opportunities. Because some of the misinterpretation is that either we haven't done a good job, or we haven't done enough, or we haven't done a great job, or we are just okay. We are not selling our capability to the full. As a result, that we are misinterpreted in a way, or misunderstood, that we are not up to the role that could be available for us. Some of the misperceptions, because of the humility, that some of the things that we tend to do without realizing we are doing. So for example, we are doing a great job, then people will notice my work. My boss is going to recognize it, my colleague is going to recognize it, so I don't need to sell it for myself. Great work, great result coming from the previous project is something that I'm going to set aside for the annual evaluation. I don't need to talk about it until the annual evaluation. These two things, because again, it's probably based on the heavily ingrained humility value. So setting aside for others to talk about and recognize my great work and my capability. What if your boss is moving out of the current role and then changing jobs? What if the person who used to know about your great work is not there anymore? Your great work done in March, great role happens and then available in May, but you didn't do the proper selling job. As a result, that the role is not going to come to us or come to you. So we are not selling enough, but assuming that everyone is going to notice the great work and the capability that we do. So sometimes people get upset when the opportunity for getting a promotion is passed over, and then thinking that the company is not recognizing your value. It is not the case. Company will see many people's selling stories, but not coming from us. East Asians tend to be very quiet, get the things done and move on to the next job, and expecting others will recognize the great work that we've done, but that will not happen. And then we tend to get upset about the company not recognizing us, our great work. Worst case, then they tend to leave and then get a new job in another company. Whether the situation is going to change, not really, because of the fact that we are not selling ourselves enough to the full potential. Some small changes are happening in the US corporations. Zoom, corporate like Zoom, AMD are doing great and happen to be run by East Asians. Because of that, now there is a small recognition that the typical US leadership style may not be the answer for everything. And then there is a recognition that different leadership style, the US is probably ready to accommodate different and diverse range of leadership style, including some of the leadership styles of East Asians. For example, do not talk first. Always wait for others to talk first, and then always talk only when it's necessary. Technically very sound, very introverted, but listening first. And also value in the teamwork. So having the trust in people they work with and then build a partnership with employees. So if you think about the typical and also favored leadership style being the leader in the front, saying follow me type of leader, the Asian leaders that is being shown here is the ones who's in the back, supporting the employees, supporting the people from the back, and then supports the people who they need when they need help. So it's small, but it's encouraging because the stereotypical leadership style is being changing slowly and gradually. So I think with the small change that is happening, and then also good values that we have, I don't think it's not about the right or wrong leadership style or better or worse leadership style, but it's more about how we are going to leverage East Asian behaviors and values to turn that into the strong strengths that we can turn that into the leadership quality that is going to work for the future, and how we become the leaders of the strengths. That I think would be the question that we have to answer. One thing, there are two biggest opportunities for us, the way that I see based on my study and based on the work that I've done with my clients. The first one is bridging the two cultures. So we understand where our culture insights, cultural background, educational background. So we have certain challenges. So we need to build awareness about that. And then also we need to understand what is required to be successful in the US culture, so that we'll build the two cultures, bridging two cultures together, so that we can leverage our own strengths, but also build on those strengths, adding the US aspects. The other thing is that I cannot stress enough of the importance of the soft skills. Looking back, some of the values, East Asian values and attitudes that I mentioned, like respecting hierarchy, conformity, and also answering to the orders from the high authority. As a result, we haven't had the opportunity to be educated on soft skills. For example, being assertive, challenging the orders. So when I have for example, when I have an interview or when I have a team meeting, or when I had a team meeting in the corporate office, we seldom hear the question why from East Asians, because we are so used to, okay, what we need to do next, because my boss is asking me to do this. So what we need to do by when. Whereas Western counterpart or other Asians then tend to understand why we should do this. But asking questions is not something that we are well trained, because asking questions is challenging the authority, challenging the order of the higher people. So as a result, we have not been trained about those aspects. So soft skills is something that we should build more to be able to be seen as a leader, and also build the basic leadership skills. Some of the strengths that we have: strong work ethic, technical strengths, tolerance, and resilience, that we don't give up easily, and then not being afraid of overcoming challenges. That's the strength that we have. We should maintain those. So I'm not saying that we should get rid of that. However, we also need to think about how to build the soft skills that will be required, not only in the US settings, but in the global setting. That the soft skills is very important. The reason that I am talking about soft skills this much is because it takes so long. So it's not something that you can get it over some sessions of training. You cannot get this from reading a book. You cannot study, but you have to train your body. So you get the knowledge, but you have to train your body to practice it over and over, so that it becomes part of you. But it takes so long, and I have felt the pain myself. I had to learn hard way to build my soft skills, being assertive, communicate what I am thinking, to make others to understand where I come from, and also build the self-confidence, for example, without second guessing about myself. Those are the things that really, like a personal training, if you think about it, it's like a building muscle. You have to do it, repeat over and over, so that it will be part of you in the end. But it takes long, and it's better to do it a lot earlier, when you are younger, earlier part of your career path, so that you are fast-tracking your development in the corporate. So far that I talked about some of the challenges we tend to face, and then some of the perceptions that we have versus others, and then some of the tips, bridging the gap from expected leadership norms and then where we are. Now I'm going to spend 5 minutes talking about my leadership consulting business in the US. The goal of the business is to really help Asian leaders to be at their best. So the Asian future leaders to be at their best. My passion has been really, I got a lot of great opportunities from the companies that I have been working for. And then I like to share that great opportunities with all the East Asians that is in the States, no matter where they are operating, to take the great opportunities that they can get in their career path. One of the things is that the leadership educations or the programs are not, the existing ones are not developed by Asians because it was following the norm of the existing dominant culture, so by US companies and European companies. So for those companies who wants to develop Asian leaders or who wants to develop individuals, they tend to find the programs that is existing, but that does not seem to work because the programs does not have the Asian culture insight, or sometimes that the people who are running the program do not have the executive experience before. And because of that lack of understanding, what type of challenges that the Asians tend to face, that the programs have not been effective based on my study. So I think that's where I can add a lot of value because I have gone through those challenges myself. I overcome some of those myself and then made my career. So I will be able to help to work with the East Asians to be able to progress through the career path. The programs that I have is to help East Asians to overcome culture and career challenges, and then help the East Asians to be the future leaders and to achieve their development goals, and also help East Asian businesses to operate better in the US, especially for the businesses when they move from their home country to US. They tend to replicate some of the success models from their home country to here in the US, and that cause a lot of issues with their employees. So I work with them to build a strategy, how to educate or train the people from US to build a cross-cultural understanding. But this case is reverse the situation. So for the Americans to learn about the Asian cultures. So sometimes I do the one-on-one sessions and sometimes I do the group workshop, and everything is customized to suit individual needs. I will share briefly about my case studies and I will open up for the questions. The client A, she has a strong consulting background and has some consumer experience. At the moment, is a senior manager at US company, has been working in the US for more than 10 years, and highly regarded and slated for a promotion. And she came to me saying that this is exactly her words. I found myself quietly taking notes at the meetings. I do not have confidence to speak up. It was my meeting, it was my topic, but I found myself quietly taking notes at the meetings. I need to move up or out. So she really wants to be seen as a leader because she knew she's slated for a promotion and she needs to build the confidence to speak up in front of senior leaders. Those senior leaders are the ones that she needs to interact with all the time. So I helped her to build the soft skills, especially around self-promotion, communications, and leadership. And also, more importantly, I also helped her to start to do a stakeholder management and build a network. I haven't talked about the stakeholder management earlier. East Asians tend to be very shy to approach senior leaders and then start to engage in a conversation. And then thinking, well, I'm not senior enough, he or she may not know me, and then I don't know what I could do for the person. So it's always being shy about approaching those senior leaders as a stakeholder. Whereas our counterpart, Indians or the Westerners, definitely they will reach out to those senior leaders to build the network and also manage them as part of the stakeholders. Why managing stakeholders very important? Of course, you will make yourself known. more importantly, you will feel a lot more comfortable and confident to speak in front of them at the meeting once you build a personal relationship and once you build a personal rapport with those leaders. In addition, through the conversation, you start to understand what is their priorities are, what are the things that concerns them the most. You will be able to figure out what value that you will start to add. By doing so, then you will be noticed. You will be performing a lot better than previously because you will know more about the business. You will understand more about the senior leaders. Stakeholder management is very important, so I also helped her with how to do it systematically and then start to help her build her confidence to approach them. So this is her own words after 6 sessions. She said, I started to be proactively engaged senior leaders, and I'll also feel more confident to manage the bigger responsibilities. Bigger responsibility here does not mean more work, but the bigger responsibilities to get a broader exposure without second guessing herself. So she felt a lot more confident, and she said that I helped her, to make her see what she could do more rather than what she couldn't do. So it was very rewarding experience working with her. The other case is the PhD scientist and engineer who's working in the US-based global company. And because of PhD degree that he was saying that I have been very happy with my fellowship track. However, he started to feel that he's falling behind than others. So he came to me, hey, by the way, can you help me to look into some of the career options with my experience, with my qualification? And what are the appropriate capabilities that we need to build? Then we had 6 sessions. Of course, career paths we talked about, but again, that I also worked with him around the stakeholder management, soft skills as well. And what he said was, I wish that I worked on building my leadership skills early on, he said. With the fellowship track, that he did not think that the leadership skill was necessary because technical skill is a lot more important. However, later, by having a conversation with me, he realized that even on the fellowship track, there is always a leader that should lead a team. And in the fellowship track, then the leadership skills is required. Putting the effort to learn leadership skills for fellowship track, then may as well to do it for the managerial track as well. And he was saying that if he knew earlier to build the leadership skills, then he could have pursued both tracks at the same time. That could have given him more career choices than now. However, it's better to be late than never. So he's happier than before, and then he's pursuing both tracks by talking with his boss. So this is all I have. Apologies again for the technical challenges. I promise you again that I will be better next time. But for those, not only for those who participate in the call, but for every member in the Georgia Tech Chinese Affinity Group members, then I'd like to offer 30 minutes complimentary coaching session. No commitment is required, but I really like to start a conversation to be able to share my experience that made me where I am, and to be able to work out together what would be the skills that is required to build a career in the US, and then what is the best path to be able to achieve that goal. So I have my contact information, telephone number, and emails is going to be in the back, and then feel free to reach out to me to set up a session. It's going to be complimentary for the group. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, so I think that we have about 13 minutes left. Let's open to the audience for Q&A. If you have any questions for Sung-Hee, please ask her. And I think this is a good opportunity, right? So if you want to have that 30 minutes private conversation, certainly feel free to do that. Her contact information is in the presentation I already shared with the team. Okay. And if you want to ask her now, please feel free to do that. Don't be shy.
Hey, Sung Hee, this is Jerry again. Thank you so much for bringing up this much needed topic in front of us, right? I think compared to, as you mentioned, compared to our Indian coworkers, sometimes we shy away from the crowd and shy away from some engaging conversations. So really appreciate you highlight that. And my question is, for some of us already in a leadership role, right? Could you help to provide some targeted training, like be more influential, or on some managerial skills? Is that part of your offering?
Yes, definitely. So when I work with the leaders, when I work in the senior leaders, then I have a conversation, start with the clients first. Now also I do the stakeholder interviews as well to really understand where are the challenges. But definitely, yes, that's part of the offering. Because that way, by having the conversation, then we can identify specific needs. And also, sometimes it's a mismatch, and then sometimes it's just not aware. And also sometimes like team development, stakeholder management, and also even for the additional career paths, moving up to the like CEO track, for example. So because of that, I offer the services too. Yes, definitely.
Sounds good. I just send out a LinkedIn connection request. So looking forward for a conversation.
Yes, it's great. Thank you. While you are trying to figure out some of the questions, let me share some other ones. I have been talking with another client of mine who's East Asian, and she said, "I like to learn how to ask good questions." Right? And then he said, "Yes, I have to learn that too," because that's one of the things that we are not well trained. And one of the things that we have to think about is that for those, we are always afraid to ask questions, especially being on East Asians. One of the things is that we are fear of being not correct, or we are fear of being wrong. Like in the school, like when you go to school as an elementary school student, the first thing that my mom told me is that listen to your teachers. In the Western culture, the first thing that the parents will say to their kids, raise questions if there's anything that you didn't understand. So it's already that from the education part that we are not trained to ask questions, and also we are fear of being wrong, so we don't ask a question, we try to hide behind. So this is something that really that we have to train ourselves, including myself. It's still, I'm learning, I'm building my muscles, like challenging status quo, challenging the discussions, challenging others. It's not ingrained in our DNA, so we have to try really hard. But I think that the key difference is from early on at the age of 6 or 5 or 6, that we were told to listen first. And then while Westerners were told to ask. Have something to share?
No, so I saw that there's one question come in from one of the participants. The question is that could you provide some good books about leadership? It's from a user dial-in participant, EZ.
Oh, let me think about that. Actually, I have a list of books that I shared with my client, so I can send it out when I send the deck. Or Jeremy, what I can do is I can share that with you. So
yeah, absolutely. I'll share with the group. Yeah, so you asked me a question, is do we have a lot of Indians in our workplace? I think it depends on the industry and where we're in. If you are in IT, I think you'll see a lot of Indian colleagues, right?
Yep.
So that's for sure. And certainly if you are going to a higher level position, in many cases, in many companies, you'll see Indian, the supervisors and the Indian, senior leaders. So it's very common. I think it's a good opportunity to learn from them. And I personally have lots of Indian friends, and one thing I try to avoid is stereotyping people, right? So you have to look at them as individuals, and once you take that lens, and you'll see some amazing things. Some of them certainly they share some common things, but in general, if you take down that stereotyping lens, and then you observe them one by one and see what they're doing and ask them questions, right? So in many cases, this is my personal experience. In many cases, you need to build a personal relationship with your senior leaders, and with your peers, and with whoever that in the company that you want to work with, or be a mentee of that senior leader, and just to reach out to them. Don't be shy. I think one thing that Sung emphasized is that we tend to be more passive and waiting for the opportunity to come to us, waiting for people to find out that we're great. But unfortunately, this is not the world. I think that especially in the US, you have to really know how to build your own brand, and how to promote yourself, and how make sure that what you have done being visible to other people. And this is often you'll see some of my Indian colleagues, and in the past and now they're doing a much better job. So that's something that I should learn from that.
Yeah, definitely. One thing actually that reminds me of my experience that I like to share. I had an opportunity to have a call from the US headhunter while I was back all the days. Her first question was, tell me about yourself. That's the most difficult question, right, for an interview. And then I didn't do well because I was not prepared for that question. And then also being an Asian, of course, that started with a big story first, so where I've come from, etc. And then it just became very lengthy conversation. The feedback that I got is that she would not be able to compete in the US market. It was probably painful feedback, but it was a good feedback for me that time to really understand, okay, that I need to really understand how to sell myself in a way that is going to work in the US market.
Yep. Yeah, that's very good. In my interviews, in many cases, I was interviewing for senior management roles. In many cases, that questions come up, right? So, tell me about yourself and who you are, why you are applying to this job. Yes. So you have like a window of like 1 to 2 minutes, and you have to really define who you are, and basically you have to sell yourself. But that's some exercise I think that every one of us, we should take some time to think about that. Many of you have a LinkedIn profile. In the LinkedIn, you have a headline, you have a very short description of yourself. And, I would encourage everyone to think about that. What's your brand? What are the keywords that you want people to remember you about, right? And what are your strengths? How will that strengths and keywords and your brand can help you to promote yourself and to answer that question? Tell me about yourself, right? So that's very critical exercise that you have to do. I would encourage everyone, once you get off this call, to go back to your LinkedIn profile and think about that, and think about how you want to do it, and then do a search for your colleague or your senior leaders, or somebody or somebody you want to connect with, or someone in a position that you want to be in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and see how do they define themselves, right? Or maybe a colleague who is doing very well in the company, or a superstar that that in the same industry that you're in. Search their profile and see how do they define themselves. Often you'll find surprise. You'll find someone that they did really well, and they have a very strong brand. And then reach out to them, talk to them, and learn from them, right? And then for yourself, and do that exercise. Set up your LinkedIn, the landing page, and from there that you can go on.
Definitely. One thing, even the white Americans, so not East Asians, but white Americans also feel that they are not good at selling themselves. But it's interesting, isn't it? So the competition is the raising the bar together. We raise the bar, but they also raise the bar. even though we feel that they are doing a far better job at selling themselves, but a lot of them feel that they are not good at it. So we just need to think about how to close the gap and to be competitive in the marketplace. Some of the thing is, Jeremy, you mentioned great point about the LinkedIn. The other thing is, if you're thinking about changing your job, then writing a strong resume, great resume, it doesn't have to be long, but great resume is also another thing that you also need to think about. What type of words that we want to use to be able to sell ourselves what we've done, and then showcase your great work. A lot of resumes that I've seen is talking about the responsibilities rather than achievement. So that's something that we have to watch out. The other thing is the type of words that we use in the resume. Sometimes you can use your resume for internal applications even, and then make sure that you have a regular update of your resume to reflect your latest achievement. And also at the same time, some of the words that you use showcase your leadership, not about your projects, but showcase your leadership to make sure that you demonstrate your readiness to be in the senior leadership position. So certain type of words that you use on the resume is critical for you to get to the next level.
It's actually tied back, right? Tied back to the brand definition, to how to sell yourself, how to promote yourself. Just put yourself in the situation, right? So everyone is working on some project or some ongoing work. Think about the situation. Next day, if you go to work, let's say we return to office and you are in the same elevator as your CEO. Your CEO is asking you, let's say using Jerry as an example. Hey, Jerry, tell me what you're doing. Which department are you from? And you have like probably 30 seconds or 1 minute and to tell the CEO what you're doing. What are you going to tell the CEO, right? So that is exactly the same kind of story you need to tell on your resume as well. So with 1 or 2 lines of text, and you should be able to tell people what you did, what's the situation, what's the challenge, what's complexity, what's your role, and what's the impact. And use that, and it should be really catching. And in that way, you can catch the attention of whoever review your resume or the CEO who is in the same elevator as you. And that should be just take that a few seconds. So that's the same exercise. I think that every one of us should think every day, right? What's your story? How to promote yourself? But that's some exercise I would encourage you to do as well as you put your resume together and think about what you have done in the past, project by project. Think about that situation and really short sentences and answer those questions and put yourself in that kind of elevator with the CEO. What are you going to tell the CEO?
So this Jerry, just want to echo Jeremy's message, right? As any professional, if you don't have 3 versions of elevator speech ready, you have not done your job, right? Not only you can talk about the highlight of your project, the impact, and you should have a predefined value proposition, why you are adding value to this organization, why you are relevant to this game, right? So just some experience like I want to share with everyone. I think probably I'm the older one on this call, or maybe other than less experienced than our coach, but definitely I spent like 15 years in the industry already. You have to make sure you have a very compelling elevator speech. Just be able to define the value and quickly go over this with anyone, not only your senior leadership team, but also your colleagues, right?
Thank you, Jerry. Actually, one thing that the words that resonate with me the most is impact and the value. The impact that you showcase, how to show your impact on your organization and also demonstrate your value to the organization. Otherwise, you are not going to be relevant anymore. And that's very critical. So thanks for sharing.
Right, so I think we're 3 minutes over our time, and sorry for the late start. I have shared the presentation that Sung put together. Very nice presentation. Unfortunately, we cannot see it when we go through the call today. But you should be able to go to the WeChat group and download it. If you still cannot get it, I would suggest you reach out to me. And I think that many of you should know my phone number or my email or my WeChat ID, and feel free to do that. I will share the information with you. And within that presentation, there's a Sung Hee's contact information is towards the end. So as Sung Hee mentioned, she's offering 30 minutes of free chat with everybody, and there's no commitment. I think this is a good opportunity for you to connect and to share with her what your challenges are and what you want to do, and just leverage her experience in so many years in the large Fortune companies and help you to grow. All right.
Thank you, Jeremy, for the closure. So I look forward to connecting with everyone on the call and then others who cannot join the call. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I follow with the list of the books that I would like to recommend. So thank you. And Jeremy, specifically, thank you for putting this together. Thank you so much for your help.
Yeah, so once you finish the call, please send me the recorded link, the recording link, and I'll share with the group as well. All right.
Okay, will do.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.